Good evening, or good afternoon. Welcome to Smithfield Town Council Work Session. It's August the 24th, 2026, and it's now 3 p.m. Before we get started, we have an introduction by Michael Stallings for our new HR Director.
Yes, sir. I'm going to introduce Ira Daly. She is our new HR Director. She started today. She comes to us from the city of Hampton, so we're glad to have her, and she's getting her feet wet already. So just want to let you guys meet her, and she'll be hopefully working with us for a while.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. This time, do we have any public comments signed up?
No, sir.
We have none signed up. Do we have any from the public? Hearing none, we'll move to the public safety.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I had requested, I can sign up if need be, but I had requested that we add a council comment section of this, and I thought we were going to do that. I do have a few comments and requests.
We've had those during our regular council meetings. We've never had them during committee or work session meetings. I mean, if it's a will of town council to entertain that, then we can do that moving forward.
Previously, all of our committees had representation in which they all had opportunities to take the floor. In this new format, we no longer have that opportunity by nature of the way we're doing business.
We still have people that are on these committees that, at least 3 on each committee, so I don't see why the work session doesn't allow us to continue to speak about this, and we don't have to be moving into council comments other than the public comments. So I'll entertain some talk about this during discussion for further discussion in future references as to how we want to proceed. At this time, I'd like to, the public safety report. Chief?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. You all have our July. Okay. You all have our July activity report. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions pertaining to that July activity report, if there are any. And if there aren't any, we have a presentation here today. If you've been watching the news, there's been a lot of information in the news concerning Flock. So we have some representatives from Flock here today to make a presentation to the council. And at this point, I will turn it over to Major Meyer and Lieutenant Woolley.
Good afternoon. So before this presentation, we wanted to share 2 success stories that we had with Flock Safety. So we've had Flock Safety for a few years now, but we wanted to do something that was maybe a little bit more serious and then something a little bit more recent to show some success stories. The first one that I wanted to share with you all was the Truist Bank robbery and how Flock was instrumental in that case. You all will learn a little bit more about Flock today and exactly what its capabilities are. I don't want you to think that it is a end-all be-all savior of investigations, right? But what it does do is generate leads. It generates a way for us to investigate things. So during the Truist Bank robbery, after we process the scene, we do a canine track, we get a tip that there was a gentleman who saw somebody matching our description of our suspect get into a white vehicle and flee the scene from down Smithfield Boulevard. What we were able to do is do a geofence location. So I took Smithfield and I said, what white cars entered or left the town just before and just after our bank robbery? And wouldn't you know, we had one vehicle that matched that description. And it entered and left through Battery Park Road, similar to our other previous bank robberies that we had. They came in through Battery Park and they left through Battery Park. What we were able to find was that tag hadn't been reported stolen yet. When we spoke to the rental company, it was later reported stolen. But that was the initial piece of our investigation that gave us somewhere to start looking. And we ended up identifying the suspect in that bank robbery, and he was found guilty in federal court of all 4 bank robberies that he was a part of. And Smithfield was instrumental in identifying that suspect that led to the conviction of the 3 other bank robberies that he committed outside of Smithfield. Without Flock, we would not have had that initial lead that led us to the rental company of that vehicle, which he ended up being an employee of, and that's how he got access to the vehicle that was stolen. And through our investigation, obviously we uncover a bunch and are able to get other evidence, but without that initial Flock lead, we would have not been able to identify a vehicle to start that investigation with. The second one that I wanted to share is one that is more recent. We had a parental abduction last month where a mother had skipped multiple court hearings and had fled the state with her 2 children. We were able to utilize Flock to show that, one, she had in fact left the state. So we had Flock hits in Georgia that showed that she had left the state. And where it further goes into our investigation is that Flock allows us to start that investigation, right? So we know that she has left the state, which is against the law for the parental abduction. But then we were able to forward that investigation where we get cell phone pings on her cell phone, and we're able to locate her and the kids in Florida. So Flock is able to help. It is not tracking the person, it is tracking a vehicle. It is an entry into an investigation, and it generates leads for us to further investigate. I think that, those are the 2 success stories that, that we wanted to share with you all. We have Dan here from Flock and Carl. They are going to give more of the overview of Flock, and then we can take any questions after that, if there anything that's specific to the PD, how we do it, or if it is more generalized, Flock can handle answering any of those questions.
I believe that's IQ. Thanks.
That's
Lieutenant.
you, Dan.
For all the folks in the room, I can't see you, so apologies. I'm not exactly sure who all I'm speaking with, but it's a pleasure. My name is Dan, and I am the account representative from Flock Safety. I work with agencies all across the state of Virginia, and then I've brought along my counterpart Carl, who I can let introduce himself quickly, and then we'll jump into everything.
Yeah. I appreciate the time, and thanks for having us speak this conversation. My name is Carl Bach. I'm a public affairs manager with Flock Safety, and we're going to run through some slides about what the technology does, and then we'll stay on the line for questions.
Perfect. All right. So moving into really like what Flock is and what the technology does, right? And you all, just to confirm, you can see this automated license plate reader slide. Making sure everything's working here.
Yes.
Good. Okay, great. So what an automated license plate reader is, it is a solar power camera. It sits on a pole like you see right in this picture, and it's usually solar or on a solar panel. It sits about 12 to 14 feet high, and it's on public right-of-ways. So these cameras, as you've heard Lieutenant mention, they're used for criminal investigations. They provide law enforcement with a tool to generate leads in order to speed up investigations and solve more cases at the end of the day. And these tools are we call them a force multiplier, because they allow your officers to be really, really efficient in what they're doing, rather than tracking down footage from all these different areas and knocking on doors and witness testimonies, right? Like, this is a very, very efficient way to find the vehicle associated with a crime, get a tag for that vehicle, and then go out and try to find that vehicle. So in its simplest form, this is what an automated license automated license plate reader is and what it looks like.
And just to get in some frequently asked questions, what does an automated license plate reader do? What does it not do? The license plate reader takes a single photo. It's a point in time where a vehicle is passing the camera on a public road. The cameras are positioned to view the rear exterior of a vehicle to capture make, model, color, and the license plate. These are only used to support identified criminal investigations, but every search of the system is permanently logged in an audit log, so law enforcement can go back and verify that it's part of a lawful investigation. What the Flock system doesn't do, it does not use any facial recognition. Again, these cameras are trained to look at the rear exterior of a vehicle, to look for vehicle characteristics, not faces. Does not allow for search of people, pets, or clothing. This is not in any way connected to the DMV system or contain any information about the driver. So we don't know who's driving or even who owns the vehicle. It's just a photo of the vehicle. It does not automatically generate speeding tickets. This is not a red light camera. It won't send you a ticket in the mail if you don't fully stop at a stop sign. It does not track a vehicle continuously. It's just a one point in time image of where that vehicle was to aid in investigation.
I want to just pause for a second on this. Are there any immediate questions on the does versus does not? I think this is very important.
Yes, I have a question.
Ask him if he can hear it because
Go
Can you hear
ahead.
that, Dan? We got one question. Are you hearing the mic from me?
It's faint.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit,
you'll
yeah.
have to translate for him
Okay.
because the microphone's only in the.
I'm going to translate for you, Dan. Give me a second. What you got?
Okay.
So I see that it does not use facial recognition, but the recordings that are captured, can other entities such as the police department or other entities that we share data with use facial recognition software with those recordings?
So I'm gonna take that. So it doesn't collect faces. It only collects the back of a car. One. Two, Virginia law makes it illegal for any entities, law enforcement wise, to use facial recognition. So we can't use facial recognition on anything.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. We got it, Dan.
Thanks, Lieutenant. I caught most of that. Thank you. And yeah, please keep questions coming. We want to make this, making sure you guys get all the information you need. So moving into, what does an ALPR actually see? What are your officers searching? When they type in a search, what does it look like? These two images are exactly what the cameras are capturing. So we are capturing a wide view of the vehicle, the rear of the vehicle, right? We can't see who's driving it. We don't have any clue into that. We're just capturing the rear of the vehicle so that we can collect the make, model, and color. And then we're doing a zoom in on the license plate. And that is what's being stored and recorded, along with a date and timestamp and wherever the location of the camera is. So these images are the only two things that are found and searchable within the license plate reading cameras. It's a very simple wide view and a narrow view on the license plate. Questions there?
Yeah, actually, I have another question here.
We got one more.
So as that's positioned and thinking in reference to our cameras on Main Street, and in the photo on the left with the Cadillac, if there was a sidewalk along where those gray lines are and someone were walking there, it would also capture those people and their faces as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
I have a question also. Are you telling us that the photographs are never taken from the front of the vehicle?
Correct. This is, all of the cameras are facing, so I say never, right? So right here you have the vehicles that are traveling one direction. That is the focus of what the purpose of this camera is. If somebody was coming the opposite direction from this photo, it would have the front of the license, the front of the vehicle, right? Because the way that a road works is that if
No.
it is focusing on the vehicle that is leaving, it's not that it would never, just as if somebody were walking in the sidewalk.
This is also for a wider road as well, so it angles out more. I think most of ours are angled more along the road.
My question was a little more general than our specific ones. So if it's a two-lane going away from us, and the second car has a license plate that identifies it as stolen, can you act on that?
What would be difficult is if the system would even recognize it as a second license plate, because it is focused in a certain box area it's like the hit area of that camera. It's the center portion. They have engineers that we worked with to set those cameras up to make sure that it's hitting in the lane that it's supposed to hit in. So if it were to capture a license plate on the other side, I don't know if we would even get a hit if that was a stolen license plate. I don't know if it would recognize it.
And a third, in the incident that you referenced for us, where the car was in Georgia and then Florida, does that require any sort of warrant for you to?
It does not. So with the laws in Virginia, Virginia is allowed to search outside of Virginia for data. We are not allowed to share data we are not allowed to share our data to the outside. So we are allowed to search nationwide with entities that share their camera data with us, but we cannot share camera data with them.
Plus the Fourth Amendment requires, so it's these images are the sole property of the client, right? So that would be the police departments or the cities and stuff. They share that data with us on their own accord. So when somebody shares that stuff with you, you don't need a search warrant to go get it. Like 7-Eleven, if I go in there and ask them for video and they say, yes, here you go, I don't have to have that search warrant. If they say no, then I got to go back and get a search warrant. Get it? And these entities are sharing that data with us, so we wouldn't need one.
Another question about the photo on the left. So I understand it's focusing for the outcome is the photo on the right, but theoretically, if there's a crime being committed around the vehicle in the photo on the left, is that useful as evidence? Is it allowed as evidence? Does it provide any utility?
It's allowed as evidence, but that's not the purpose of its capture. There's no evidence rule. And that's the thing, is we might not find it, because that's not the focus of the search. A good example is that we recently had a shooting over on West Main Street. We had individuals on foot that we found in camera footage. Flock wasn't utilized in that investigation because vehicles weren't present. So because Flock has a very specific niche purpose in helping us investigate crimes, and that is vehicles.
Mr. Mayor, may I have a question, please?
Yes.
It's for counsel.
Yes.
Pursuant to the Fourth Amendment of the United States of America, does the public have an expectation of privacy in a public highway?
So at this time, no. There's actually anticipation of this topic. There's actually a January 2026 published opinion out of the Norfolk Division of Federal Court that addressed this very issue. There's a 51-page opinion that Judge Davis put out, and he addressed in the context of the city of Norfolk, and Flock may be familiar with this precedent because it's really candidly making news all around the country. Norfolk has, I think, 175 cameras, which is kind of a staggering amount when you think about it. And there was a challenge to exactly that, Mr. Bowman, which is whether or not the public in general has an expectation of privacy and whether it's an unconstitutional search to simply be captured inadvertently on the Flock cameras. And Judge Davis basically came to the conclusion at this point, given the technology, the answer is no. There is no right to privacy in the public on a public right-of-way whether it be your vehicle or an inadvertent capture, for example, of what Mr. Cutler was mentioning, someone walking down the sidewalk. So the answer is no at this time, but the judge did reserve the right to kind of revisit this issue, given the development in the technology that might be coming
Well,
around the bend.
but would you also not argue that at the present time, and has always been the case up until now, maybe Flock has brought this to a head, the issues that my colleagues have brought up, someone standing on the highway inadvertently gets taken a picture taken of, the next vehicle that comes down the street inadvertently is picked up by the Flock camera. Those folks are in the purview of the public, in the public highway. So therefore, once you get in the car and you go down the street on a public highway, is there an expectation that you believe that your privacy is going to be protected while you're in that venue?
The answer is no at
Thank
this
you.
time.
I don't think anyone's really insinuating that.
Wait a minute.
We've received a
That's
few.
all that's been insinuated. If you read the newspapers, you know, or read social media, everybody's like, this is a privacy issue. It's a privacy. I shouldn't, my license plate shouldn't be taken, a picture taken of it. I shouldn't be taking a picture of when I'm walking down the street. I shouldn't this, shouldn't that. As far as privacy, that has been the gravamen of the argument of everything that I have seen that's been made. And you do not, after being a police officer for 40 years, I know that if you're in that venue, you do not have an expectation of privacy.
And I think that this is why this venue that we're in now is a great opportunity for us to ask questions of our law enforcement and the Flock personnel, so we can we can help our citizens have that information and answer some of those questions. And that's why I think that it's important that we ask these questions and spend our time preparing to ask numerous questions.
I totally agree with you.
Thank you for providing this opportunity for that, as well as the Flock personnel.
I do want to add, I don't remember which one of you asked it, about the crime happening around this. Like he was saying, yes, that picture would be usable in court. The problem is, if this car didn't alert to us, we wouldn't even have that photo. We wouldn't know about it.
Well, and I think a lot of times, you know, people's fears or concerns are driven by uncertainty. And, you know, when we don't address those fears and concerns may grow. So thank you for clarifying.
I think it's important to note that it does not alert on people. You know, and again, to the question, if there was a car in the other lane, it wouldn't alert to the other car. It would only have captured it if by happenstance they were passing at the same time. So it's not alerting the people or anything outside of that target area.
I have a
If
question.
I may, Mr. Mayor, follow up.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think either one of us meant to put you guys on the defensive. Instead, exactly what Mr. Cutler just said. We'd like to get as much information out there to the public because, as Mr. Bowman said, the newspaper is banging this to death. And it's important for us to ask the question so that there's clarity for our citizens as well. Thank you.
The question I had was, and I had seen this on the local news, that Smithfield had initiated where you could actually pull up to see if your license plate had been recorded. Is that any truth to that, or has that been twisted by the media, or
So a little bit
how does
twisted.
that work?
So a little bit twisted. So recently we released the Flock Transparency Portal. It is offered through Flock. It is no cost. It is with our subscription. One of the things that we weighed is that what can we release to the public without jeopardizing an investigation? And I can give examples of, if you want, of when it would jeopardize an investigation. What I don't want is to put a suspect's tag in a searchable database where we are trying to either locate him or establish him as a offender, not just a suspect. I don't want that to be out in the public. So we have a shooting and then everybody is able to search and say, oh yeah, well they found the tag, they found my tag. That means that they're on to me. I need to move other things. I don't want that. But what I do want is some sort of transparency to see how many times we are searching, right? There's in the news, we talked about it in a meeting where there's a deputy in Florida that was searching 700 times for his ex-wife through the Flock. Smithfield is unique that we don't have 500 officers searching through Flock. We have 23. It is very easy to tell if somebody is misusing Flock in Smithfield. It is very easy for us to see those things. It is not difficult. It is easy for the public to see it. in the sense that it does break down what we are searching for. Kidnapping, larceny, drug, you are able to see that. You aren't able to see if your license plate is searched for.
And just along that link to that portal was in your Friday news a week or so ago, so you were able to go, you all have access to it.
I do want to add to what he said, because it's important. Virginia law is very restrictive on us for Flock and does not allow us to release the data from Flock. So not even on a FOIA. So you guys could FOIA the data. We cannot share it with you. We cannot share it with our federal partners. The only people we can share it with are other Virginia law enforcement agencies. That's it.
Mr. Mayor, the topic that you guys broached would be a good segue into some concise questions that I have, or I'm not sure if it's not really related to where we're at in the presentation.
But they have a large presentation if you want them to go on.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I could.
They're short, probably short questions.
Okay.
So the first, and the reason I'm asking these questions, I think that we recognize the utility and benefit of Flock, and I think that the importance to our citizens is how we manage and utilize it, right? So just a few questions. So do we have a written process for how we manage the Flock system?
We have a policy on Flock. Are you talking about specifically on how it is audited or how it is utilized? Because we have a lot of different things. So the state mandates, as of January, that we submit, currently it's quarterly audits to state police. They have created that. And with a full annual report due April 1st, 2027. And that has to be open, that has to be viewable to the public. So we have state law that talks about the auditing of Flock. Then you have internal, which is our policy on how Flock is utilized and why it is utilized in that purpose. So kind of, those are the two avenues that we have governing Flock.
And our policy right now follows, again, I'll say it again, Virginia law is very restrictive on how we use this. And it lays out how we have to use it. And so our policy mirrors the state law because the state law is that restrictive for us.
Perfect, thank you. You mentioned sharing, so who do we share with?
Virginia agencies that have requested, we share with. I have an open, so I am able to share with, in the portal, I'm able to accept any Virginia law enforcement agency that has requested, we will share data with them. Who we cannot share with is anybody that is not Virginia law enforcement. That means even FBI Norfolk, they are not Virginia law enforcement. They are federal partners, ATF, anybody who is a federal, so big news, ICE, right? We cannot share with ICE, we cannot share. And one thing that is in this presentation is that we are in charge of who we share with. It is our data. We are in charge, we have the clicks of who, if there is an agency, and there was an agency that was sharing Flock data with, they were more open source. We stopped sharing with them because they were sharing more data than we wanted to with the public. So we are able to share with Virginia law enforcement.
Can you be compelled to share with a Virginia law enforcement body?
Yes. So subject to legal. So let's say that we had a case that originated in North Carolina, and North Carolina had done their investigation and it had led them to Smithfield Police Department, where we have Flock cameras and they needed that for their investigation. They would have to provide us with legal documentation, either a court order, a subpoena, or a search warrant for us to release that data. The feds too.
Perfect, thank you. And then one last kind of larger question related to accessibility, traceability, and need to know. So you said you have 23 officers with access. How many officers are on our police force at this time?
23. Everybody has access.
Okay. Does everybody truly have a need to know? Do all 23 officers investigate and have a need to use a Flock to investigate?
Yeah, so when you say need to know, and let's break it down first. So I'm in charge of investigations. I don't use Flock as much as my detective uses Flock. But what can happen is that I am on scene and something happens where I need to get into Flock right now. Or same with the major. He could be on scene and maybe I'm busy, somebody else, and I do need him to get on Flock. So it logs when the searches happen and what they're searched for. So if he doesn't need to search, then no. There's also alerts, and that'll be in the presentation. We got one today of stolen plate.
So then kind of related to that, then each of the 23 members has a unique login, so everything is traceable to individuals. So
Correct.
there's clear accountability and transparency in that. And then the only reason I ask about the access numbers, and if you've had a security clearance, one of the ways you keep information safe is by limiting the number of people that have access to it. So, or any type of sensitive information for that matter. Not questioning, really just asking the question, how the necessity works, so our citizens understand that. Because I find that, you are doing an excellent, job of solving crimes using this tool. And I think a lot of people's concerns may be assuaged if we talked in plain language to them about it. So thank you very much. I have one more question for Flock, but it'll probably come up later down the line.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just have one quick question. The only reason that you can access Flock is if it's part of an investigation. It's tied to a specific case. You can't just say, hey, I don't have anything going on today, I'm going to scroll through the Flock camera. I just want to make sure.
Correct.
Because there have been some questions about that. Yeah.
So if you look up at the screen, I think it's right here, we have to put a purpose. So enter the offense. We have to show an offense on what we are investigating. And then we also have to provide a case number or a CAD number. So for us a CAD number it could be as simple as a call for service that hasn't made it to a case yet, so it's not yet reportable. And then, so we have to provide one of the two that traces it back to why we're doing this. And then below that is a reason that's more free text that you can place in there. And then there's the timelines and what you're looking for.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't have questions, but those are questions that have been asked, so thank you.
Yeah, let me follow that up because that's exactly what I hope our purpose is behind this. That answer right there is going to go a long way. I hope everybody in Smithfield is watching. What we're hearing and what Councilman Bowman was sort of referencing is, oh no, this is just a gotcha. There's something out there that they're just taking pictures of all of us all the time. Your answer was excellent and to the point. You can only request a still photo taken by this Flock if you're looking for something specific.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I'll add this, and I'm speaking for them on this too. If somebody abuses it, they will be held accountable. And I think you're seeing that in the news. In places where people are abusing it, they're losing their job and going to jail. That would be the same here. I mean, so there are things to catch these people, and if it gets abused, they will be held accountable.
Yeah, like Michael said, again, Virginia law is restrictive. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor to misuse this system, so they will be charged.
If I can chime in quickly just on that note, we have something called an audit assistance tool as part of Flock, which basically will flag suspicious search activity within Flock and request the administrator of your Flock program to approve that search. So think of it as like your credit card. When you get suspicious activity, it shuts your card down. Flock is going to recognize that a potentially suspicious search went in. It's going to pause that user so they have no access until that search is approved. So in real time, we are trying to police the abuse of this system. We know it's happened in other areas, but we are the first vendor to build something like this into our platform and really stand behind it. So I want you guys to understand that as well. We recognize abuse being a major concern, and rightfully so, and we're building all of these protocols in to make sure that it's not abused.
Danny, you guys
Yeah.
want
So just to recap this slide, and yeah, we can move forward here. Just to recap, in order to run a search, an individual has to be authorized by your local department, has to log in their own account. There's a two-factor authentication to gain access to the system. And it's mandatory to list an offense type, search reason, and case number. And that information rolls up into a permanent audit log. So your agency can review to ensure that these were searches conducted as part of an authorized law enforcement investigation. You can't just type in other investigate or any other reason for this search. You have to select from the NIVER's offense types in order to move forward with the search. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. I know we got a little bit more to cover.
Yeah, and these were, you heard, I heard some reference in these earlier, but in terms of access and why it may be important for any on-duty officer to have access, these cameras are positioned at the entry points of your town to understand who is coming into your jurisdiction. And in this case, we are connected with the National Criminal Database for Amber Alerts and warrants. And so any vehicle that is associated with an Amber Alert or a missing persons has a warrant out, Flock is going to ping the officers that have access to Flock in Smithfield that in this case, a blue sedan has entered their jurisdiction. The reason why I think this is incredibly important is because you all, I shouldn't speak for you, but I think it's important for your police to know that a potential criminal is entering your town or city, right? And this is what this alerting system does, is it allows your PD to understand exactly if potentially dangerous individuals are entering your jurisdiction. So I know there was talks about why access to everyone. I think this is a really important piece for any on-duty officer to understand that there may be potentially dangerous situation coming into your town. Keep moving, Carl.
So you get questions from time to time about privacy and security. So it's important to know that 100% of the data that the cameras collect is owned by you and will never be sold. The data specifically is that photo of the exterior of the vehicle, the date, location, time, and the agency that owns that photo. Flock doesn't sell data. We will never sell data. Private customers like homeowners association or retailers can purchase their own Flock cameras to add to the network that your local agency can search from, but they do not receive any government information. They don't receive any of those hot lists. They're just able to aid in an investigation, whether that be like porch pirates stealing packages from a porch, or organized retail theft as folks move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. As mentioned, state laws were fairly restrictive here in Virginia. The data is automatically and permanently deleted after 21 days. It's irrecoverable after that. We talked about this before. The Flock LPRs only take images of publicly available information. That's your government issue license plate on the exterior vehicle on a public road in plain view. Also, as mentioned, your agency is the only entity that decides who you share your camera network with, and these cameras are not used for facial recognition of any kind. On the data security side, the photos are encrypted in transit and in rest. They're sent to Amazon Web Services Cloud. This is the highest level of cybersecurity available to the commercial sector, and Amazon Web Service will often host sensitive US government workloads. So to be compliant with this criminal justice level information, there's a number of independent security audits and certifications that we need to maintain over months and consistently prove that we're following our own security standards to be CJIS compliant. We know that cybersecurity is something we need to stay vigilant about, that we need to be constantly making sure that we cannot be breached. So recently we've hired an independent ethical hacking company, cybersecurity firm called Bishop Fox, to take an adversarial role with us over a series of months to probe our vulnerabilities, to try to break in, to try to hack our hardware and our software. And we're proud to say that we've not been breached. We've never been hacked. Go on the next slide.
Thanks, Carl. And so there was some talk earlier about the transparency portal that's been put together for the Smithfield PD, right? And this is something that we like to aid our police departments in creating, because we think it's important for you all to communicate with the public exactly what Flock is and what these cameras are doing, right? And so this is a screenshot of the website. There's more to it. I have the link in the presentation here for you all who don't have it. But basically what it's walking through is exactly what we're discussing, right? Who has access to it? How long is the data stored? How many searches are being run? What alerts are our police department getting for folks, you know, with warrants out that are entering our town? We want this to be very, I'm trying not to use the word transparent because it's all over the screen, but we want this to be as upfront and open with the public as possible. And so this is an offering that's going to be up to date every single day for you all to look at. And as we discussed, every single search query has a registered ID behind it. All of the information for that search is saved a permanent audit trail. You have to provide that to the state of Virginia. So it's all stored in here and is able to be shared dependent on you know, FOIA laws and things like that, shared with the state, or this stuff can be shared with the public. So want you guys to understand that this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of starting to make sure the public is aware and understanding of exactly what Flock and Smithfield PD are partnered together to do. But we feel it's a really important resource for the PD to have and for your community to have as well. So you'll have this link, and I'm not sure if it's on the website or not, but this is a really cool you know, proactive way to share information about Flock and what it's doing for your community. All right. I'm going to see if this will play for you guys. It's a short video. Can you guys tell me if you hear anything?
Hi, I'm Ashley. I build software at Flock. You've probably heard of license plate readers and thought, surveillance. I understand why it feels that way, but that's not what we built. License plate readers take images of vehicles. Flock LPR is used after a crime happens. Things like stolen cars, hit and runs, a missing person. An officer can search for a specific vehicle tied to that case. The LPR system doesn't track people, and it doesn't predict when crime will happen. You can only search for vehicles on our LPR cameras. License plates, make, model, color, and other unique identifiers like bike racks, trailers, and toolboxes. There's no facial recognition and no ability to track a person. In most communities, that automatically deletes after 30 days unless local laws require something different. The data collected doesn't live forever. Flock is built to help solve crimes faster and protect people's privacy. When you hear Flock LPR search, you may imagine some open, unrestricted database. Here's what the license plate reader search process actually looks like. The Flock system has built-in safety guardrails that limit who can access our tools. Law enforcement agencies also set rules based on their policies. When an investigator is working on a specific case, say a kidnapping, they enter the offense type, case number, why they're searching, and narrow it down to a time and a place. Flock requires users to log why they're running an LPR search. If there's a match, the LPR search helps them figure out which car was there. And it does not give law enforcement any information on who was in the car, either the driver or any passengers. That's it. A focused tool to solve real cases. That means missing people come home faster, more justice for victims, and overall better safety for everyone. A fair question we get a lot. How do police chiefs, law enforcement leaders, and elected officials know what officers are doing in the Flock system? First, every search and sharing request is logged. Every search records who ran it, when, and why. Agency administrators can run audits to identify any searches that don't match normal casework. Agencies also own and control all of their data. Each law enforcement agency decides if and how they share their data, unless laws and policies dictate otherwise. Agencies can approve or deny data access requests from other law enforcement agencies on a one-on-one basis or by geographic radius. Some agencies will choose to join statewide or nationwide sharing networks where possible, and that's their choice. It's never auto-approved, and they can change these settings at any time. Flock is designed to provide evidence with transparency and accountability built in, because we believe everyone has a right to be safe.
Yeah, I think I go on to the next slide. I think it's sometimes helpful just to see in real time like how the search is conducted and what it returns. I think this will be our last slide. We'll stop here. Just wanted to highlight a few organizations that have seen value in this technology. Roughly 70% of crime involved in a vehicle in some capacity. That includes investigations for missing children. So the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which run the nation's Amber Alerts, has said that this can be an effective technology to reunite and identify missing children. The Oakland branch of the NAACP in California have highlighted that this is a powerful tool for reducing bias in policing because it takes an officer's subjective suspicion of a car being in the wrong place and replaces that with precise data-driven alert saying that this is a license plate identified with an investigation so that it reduces the need for over-policing while delivering justice and public safety for the community. And then finally, just to end on this, Mothers Against Drunk Driving have cited LPR technology as being effective for post-incident crash investigations. I'll be honest, I'm terrible at remembering license plates. If I were ever to be struck by a vehicle, I would not accurately give a license plate to an officer, but I could probably give you make, model, and color. So with that information, an investigation can proceed on apprehending or investigating a hit and run. I think that's it for us here. I'll hand it back to the police.
Yeah, I guess we can open up the floor to questions.
So it's really, if you all have any questions for either, like I said, police side specifically on how we utilize it or anything for that, or if it is, you said you had one that you had for them.
Yes, sir. One question for Flock, and then I have two non-Flock related public safety questions. So thank you to the members from Flock for being here. We do see the news and understand Mr. Bowman's passion for our police force. And it's meetings like this that help us get down to the lowest level and really get solid information out that we can understand, communicated by people that our citizens know and trust, our police force. So thank you for supporting them. I know it's a tough job nationally going on with this. But my question for Flock is more about your business model and if that's going to change. You have like a Netflix-based type subscription service. I think we paid $32,000 this year, thereabouts?
For that, that's it, yes.
And is that our only annual cost, or we have?
Yeah, if you want to talk to the board, we have two different cycles.
So the way we did our Flock agreement, we did it in steps. We started out with 10 cameras, and that was the $33,000 that you saw. It's $3,000 per camera every year. And then second step, we added 7 more cameras. So our total is 51 a year.
So we physically own the cameras. Is that true?
Oh, we do not own the cameras.
Okay, so we lease the cameras.
Basically, that way we don't do maintenance on them or any of that. Flock does that all.
So I guess that maybe helps my question a little bit. Is there an alternative, or is this only a subscription-based service? Could we buy
Certainly
Flock and software, cameras and software, and do this ourselves? And would it be fiscally reasonable?
I don't know if we could buy their cameras and software, but there are other vendors, right? And I think they're all, don't quote me on that, but I think they're all this subscription-based thing. That's how all law enforcement or public safety software is these days, subscription-based. But we could go with Axon. We could go with any of these other. The reason one of the reasons we chose Flock is for their network, right? It does us no good if we're the only agency in Virginia that have Axon, and so we go to search the Axon database and there's only cars in Smithfield, and so we don't know where they went after they left Smithfield to help us on some of our crime investigations. But the Flock network is so large that we could find our parental abduction kids in Georgia. They hit off a Flock camera in Georgia. If we went with Axon, we may not have ever found that.
I appreciate that insight. My question is just a little bit more based on maybe the sales or something. Is there an alternative to a subscription service from Flock, from a Netflix types, for lack of a better comparison?
Dan, did you hear that? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I can take off for a minute. We only offer the subscription-based model, and that's a fully inclusive subscription over the course of the contract. That includes the camera, the cloud storage, any security upgrades, any maintenance or repair that needs to happen. We also will contract for the installation, so that's on us to handle the installation and not the city. The value of that is that it guarantees that you have up-to-date hardware and software that's inclusive of your lease during that term. You'll never get a server bill and 6 months down the road asking for a server upgrade or something. And if there's damage, we can contract to have a camera replaced.
I think also if we did buy our own cameras and our own software, we would probably get hacked. And I think so. They have that security piece. They have the money for that. They do that where we wouldn't be able to constantly make our security safe.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, much like the sentiment that's going on with Flock, there's a little sentiment about movement from ownership of things in our society. So that's kind of fuels my question. So I appreciate that.
One of the things to also understand is that this automated license plate readers aren't new. So the police department had an automated license plate reader on a vehicle far before since 2009. So this is new in the news now, but this technology and what it was doing was in the town in 2009. A little bit different fashion, it's on a moving vehicle, but.
I have two questions. One, how long do these Flock cameras last? And is it on Flock, they do the maintenance, the replacement, all that? I mean, obviously when they fail, but how long do they last? Or are they replaced every so often just because of technology upgrades, better cameras?
So I have a health portal in Flock where I'm able to see if our Flock camera goes down or if there is an issue. It will tell me that there is an issue. We've had one before, and they have come out on their own. They monitor it. I didn't have to contact them, and they were able to replace that camera. Dan, you might be able to speak to actual how long they're good for, but that's how it's happened here.
So that's what we're paying for, is for them to replace it. We're not paying extra every time we have to replace a camera or something.
And even when the public damages them, like you've seen in the news, the public damaging them,
Sure.
Flock's bearing that cost, not us.
Okay, great. And one more question not related to that. Don't know if this is true or not, so I know in Smithfield we don't use it this way, but someone mentioned online that other towns, and Flock could maybe speak to this, were using them on bike trails to take pictures. Is that true? And then obviously there's more facial recognition, more people involved that way versus just a vehicle. Is Flock used in that way?
So, and I'll let them talk on this after I do. So the LPR cameras are not used in parks and stuff. They're
Right,
used.
but I mean,
They're used only on the road.
Okay.
For vehicles. Now, Flock does have other cameras. Like surveillance cameras that may be used in. The Smithfield Police Department or the town of Smithfield does not have any of those cameras. We only have the LPR cameras. We don't have the surveillance ones. Dan, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I think sorry, I was gonna say, I think the confusion is sometimes that people don't know that we have multiple different types of cameras. So a lot of times, towns, cities are looking to protect public assets, public restrooms, parks, places that are getting vandalized. So sometimes they'll put cameras in those areas, town buildings, things like that. But I can't speak to me personally seeing anyone ever put it on a bike trail. The LPR camera wouldn't do anything on a bike trail because it can't collect plates on a bike, so you're not going to be able to search anything. And our cameras are permitted for public right-of-ways. So, yeah.
So
that's
Flock
what
has
I
different
told you.
kinds of cameras. We just don't use those cameras here. Okay. I mean, they're basically a security camera or whatever.
They
Okay,
would be
thank
no
you.
different than what's on the exterior of the building.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
And I think that helps kind of with one of my other questions was, so what we do see in Hampton Roads, I think, or what I've noticed is, say on Granby Street in Norfolk, little trailers with looks like a generator with a pole and a camera and some blue lights on it. Those would be probably some other type of camera, but we don't employ things such as that.
So we do have a trailer surveillance camera that we do utilize. It does not have a flock camera on it. It just has 4 downward cameras that kind of give a fisheye view, and then there is 1 point tilt zoom camera, so it goes far or short, and you can point it to a certain area, and we do utilize that.
For our public safety events at like festivals and those sorts of things.
Or in front of an ABC store when we're having larcenies, or after a shooting, or lots of different reasons, but yes.
We also had it up in Jersey Park for a while when their camera systems were down and we were having a lot of shootings out there. We had it up.
Thank you very much for clarifying that.
But to note too, our camera is very plainly labeled Smithfield Police Department. I mean, it's not incognito or.
It's got flashing blue lights on it.
Yeah.
People know what it is. It's out there.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a public safety question. It's not flock related, but.
Okay, I'm gonna let these guys go if that's all
Well,
right.
no, let me jump in before Darren asks his general question. To the Flock and police, I guess. When Flock tries to sell the system to a self-contained neighborhood, and the Flock would then be owned by the HOA, what type of access would we have, would our municipal folks have?
So we say we have 17 cameras in the town. We have 17 that the town owns. There are really 22 cameras in the town, flock cameras. Cypress Creek has 3 of them, 2 at their main entrance and then 1 at their golf course entrance, the back maintenance entrance, and then Jersey Park has 2 in and out. They can search their system. The HOA can, but all you get is the tags and the color, make, model of the vehicle, what they can clearly see in a picture. They don't get any crime alerts or anything like that. To do that, they sign an agreement with the local police department that they'll share the data with us. So our cameras, the Jersey Park and the Cypress Creek, those cameras are only shared with the Smithfield Police Department. Maybe Isle of Wight sheriffs, but they don't share them beyond Isle of Wight County. The only agreements they have are with us. So if anybody, let's say a crime that went Virginia-wide happened in Jersey Park, those other police departments have to get with us to be able to get that data. They can't search it on the system. Only we can.
What would they, I assume that they would have to do the same sort of very specific search.
Yep.
What would they type in?
For the HOAs?
Yeah, what are they looking for?
That would be a Dan and Carl question. Did you hear the question?
It was about HOAs and searching.
Yeah, how do they search?
It's a very similar search style, but obviously they don't have case numbers associated because they're not law enforcement. So they still need a reason to search. It's still collected and stored, but they can only search their owned and operated cameras. And yeah, so just Carl, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but it's basically the same thing without a case number.
I will also say that anytime Cypress Creek has something that they think may have been caught on the cameras, they don't search it. I don't know if it's that they don't understand how to use it, they don't know how to use it. They call us and say, hey, there was a crime here. You might be able to get it on the flock. Okay, thank you. They don't search it themselves usually.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Gentlemen, thank you for the presentation. I'm going to ask our safety officers to remain so Mr. Cutler can answer. One last question. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Carl.
Oh yeah, thank you. Sorry, I thought there was one last question. I appreciate you guys a lot. It's been a pleasure to partner with your community, and we look forward to continuing. So please, anyone, if you have questions from the flock side, don't be shy. We're happy to provide information where needed. Thank you all for hearing us out, and be safe. Have a wonderful day. God bless.
You too.
Mr. Cutler.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief, and all of your 23 officers that keep us safe with flock, that answering these types of questions so clearly and plainly, that really gets, I think, helps our citizens more than any national news headline. So thank you very much. We had a discussion, I think it's 2 meetings ago, about the tragic incident that happened at Clontz Park, and we discussed what opportunities there may or may not have been. And it turns out there weren't any, but I did go up to Clontz subsequent to that, and I may have missed it, but what I did observe was if a person had had an opportunity for heroism in that event from the bank, there really would have been nothing there for them to save somebody with that I saw. I don't think there's any flotation devices. I don't think there's any long reach devices. Now our steps, they're a little slimy, but they're very functional and are great. But had a person, and we're at high risk, and I think it's a great move that we're doing with Parks and Rec, putting that additional pier in, because a head injury when you fall loading the boat and with a rapid current, can be detrimental. And if you don't have something to throw, then the person that needs to save somebody can also go down. So I just would wonder if our public safety, or I don't believe we have a distinct public safety officer, but maybe the county does. Maybe there's some standards, or maybe there's something further that we should or could do in that location to enhance public safety or give opportunities. We have a lot of people that fish over there on the docks and stuff, so it would just give an opportunity for a citizen or for a bystander to have an intervention and help somebody in need. Thank you.
We can look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Appreciate the presentation. Nice job. At this time, we move to our treasury report.
Piggyback on what Councilman Cutler just said, if we're going to do that for Clontz Park, we might want to consider doing it for where the kayak launch is.
And also
Since
where
they're
the
all
piers are
water
at,
related.
too, in the park. So.
I think didn't they used to have throwable devices at those 2 locations? Somebody from Parks and Rec has responded about.
They have throwable devices?
They were stolen, is what he said. They had them there.
Oh, okay.
Laura?
Mr. Mayor and members of council. Ooh, I'm going to talk to the speaker this time. So usually I start out with a couple of other slides, but I want to talk briefly about the financial statements. Want to do that? So who out there knows about accounting? Anybody? Raise your hands. Come on. There you go. You'll notice at the very top it says preliminary. There's a reason for that. And the reasons are that based on basically accrual and of both revenue and expenses. Let me briefly talk about what that means. Okay. Expenses. We recognize them when the town receives the goods or services or agrees to pay. For the example, we get a bill. And I'll give you example of expenses based on accrual. We have payroll in the month of July. We had 3 actually. The payroll that took place on 7/3/26, it encompassed the days of 6/14/26 through 6/27 of 26, and that was 14 days. The 7/17 payroll encompassed 6/28 to 7/11, which was 3 days of June payroll. So you have to accrue that back, and it sounds simple, right? It seems like you could just take it and roll it all back to the month of June. It's not like that. You have to break out every single employee, every single benefit, and everything that happened with that. So that's why it's all of the expenses, that's just one as an example. Expenses are preliminary, which when we get closer to next month, we'll have final numbers for July, but we have to do all those accruals first. They take a while. We'll talk about revenue accrual. And we can skip over to more of a little bit of a revenue page. There we go, that'll be fine. Some of the revenues. We get in revenue from sales tax, and you've heard me talk about that before. That comes in the state. The state sends it to Isle White. Isle White sends it to us. And we're typically about 2 or 3 months behind. So we take a look at those numbers, and we book that amount back to the actual time that the money was supposed to be for. That's just an example of one of the accruals for revenue. That's why all the financial statements are preliminary right now. They will be final later, as I mentioned earlier. Is there any questions on that? You'll see nothing in the footnotes other than those specific items that I just mentioned. Nope. Okay. We'll go on to the investment performance report. This is something new. I don't think I gave that to you last month. I'm not going to read it because there is a lot of little teeny tiny words in there, but it really does give a visual representation of our investments and our rate. As you see right there, the total returns fiscal year, which we had 1 month, $111,000, 738, 111,000 and change. How about that? The average that we have right now is 4%, so I've done some little bit different investing this time. I mentioned before there were some that could give us a better rate of return, and I'm looking at that constantly. We have about $2 million in that, and we have currently, you can flip to, I'm going to let y'all read that later. Yeah, that one right there. Okay, the first page. All right, we'll talk about this, and if you see on the line that mentions VIP investment pool, and it's right under the investment right there. There's it's just called TS11. It's a 4% maturity at 4/6/27. They give me rates about every Monday, 2 or 3 Mondays out of the month, and they're still running about that percent right there. It could go for a year out, and I don't think that's prudent to run a year out further than what we're doing right now. We do get to appreciate the interest monthly on that, and for the one that we did receive that as a 4% maturity, we were appreciating $30,000 on that. We're doing the same thing with the designated funds. If you notice in that lower level right down there, that matures 3/1/27, is paying 3.9%. And let's see, if we take a look at the percentage of what we've got in the regular Virginia investment pool, we're only putting $11 million into that, and again, $6 million is into CDs that mature, as you can see up above. Any questions on that? And as I noted earlier, our investment return for the month of July was $111,000, and I also do on that new report, it just shows you a benchmark of how we've done compared to the Treasury bill note. Now, there's a new report right there. As I noted last month, I do this little thing called a forecast, and that's based on historical data, and I sort of keep in line with month over month of what we're doing. Obviously, everything past July is a forecast. So all that's based on historical data, percentages that happen each month, because we do run a pretty much the same schedule that we do year to year, and it's percentage based. So hopefully we'll be able to end up where I predict we will be, but there's of course no guarantee. So we should be under budget, but nothing happens to make us that happen. No emergencies or anything like that. Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have one question, if I may. Ma'am, I love your reports and the new investment report, and I think the information's there, and maybe I haven't asked, it's probably my fault, I haven't asked the question right, or I just don't understand how to put the information together. But what I'm curious about understanding is from our investments, you know, we have this pot of funds in the investments, various pots. And then we're budgeting and using we're pulling on potentially two occasions for, you know, this is just my terminology. We're pulling interest. The interest that we receive is going back into our general fund, or at least budgeted to go back into our general fund. Is that true? Okay, so well,
No.
I'm seeing two different heads shaking differently.
This is what happens.
So, well, maybe if I finish my question, that might help too. So, and maybe if I ask it more generally, so current interest is being used as part of our budget. The real question is understanding over the long term how our investment sum is being maintained. For instance, this year and last year we budgeted lump sum, or we budgeted investment, not just interest, but investment interest plus invested funds. So if we take invested funds, but we budgeted on, let's say, 10 million and we spend $1 million, now we have 9. So I'm curious how that washes out in the end of the year. Maybe now it's not, you know, there's not clarity for that right now, but how we get to that end point. Does that make sense?
Your question is how do we know the interest income is going to be what it is if we complete principal balance?
Not necessarily that magical or mysterious, but
Well, I mean,
based on what our planned budget is, you know, and I'll just use these round numbers again. We have 10 million. We budgeted to use 1 million plus all the interest, right? So at the end of the year, does that budget out? And then we're back down to 9 million.
well, there was a desire amongst council to spend down some of our reserves for projects. So, for example, the $2 million for the maintenance facility, that was a spend down of principal in our interest income. So we are in our invested reserves. So we accounted for that in the interest. So we lowered the interest predictions for the year, knowing we were spending down the reserves. Again, at the end of the year, it's highly likely we end up in a situation where we don't draw down any reserves because we've spent less and brought in more, which is how we typically try to budget. So at the end of the year, it's highly likely the principal won't change at all because we will have done well on our budgeting, but we do account for that when we set it up at the beginning of the year.
So maybe then that's an end of the year question, or maybe quarterly, or I don't really know. And maybe all I'm really, you know, to say real generally is just trying to understand the health when we're making those, you know, we're making those decisions, and we've made those decisions for 2 years now. So how, you know, how are we assessing the health, and are we at our goal of where we want to be on those reserves?
Laura and I sit down every year, and when we're looking at the budget and trying to determine, you know, so the maintenance building, are we better off to borrow or spend down reserves, and how does that impact our budget? And predominantly, that's going to be an interest rate question. And then also, it's, you know, how much do we have on hand, and what's the desire of council? And at the time, the desire was, well, let's spend some of that down. And so that outweighed any savings we could have gotten, you know, to borrow versus invest. But we evaluate that every year at the beginning of the budget to see what's in the best interest of the town.
Thank you.
You might have been asking this question, but you didn't specifically say it. Do we take the interest out of our account? No. That's why we're doing so well, is we compound it. Is we don't every month take out our interest, we leave it there. And we've left it there. I think we've only drawn down a little bit of money since I've been here, maybe 300,000. And that's because of the timing of when we get our revenue in, but we really don't take the money out.
But in our budget process, didn't we count the interest as revenue that funded our general fund?
Yes, and
Right.
if we got to the end of the year and our revenues had not exceeded what we predicted and our expenses had not come in less, then in that case, yes, we would use those funds to make the difference. But we have historically done well enough with our budget at the end of the year that we haven't had to touch those interests, so they have compounded in the principal.
Okay, well,
So
that's,
yes, I mean, at the end of the year, if we were in that tight of a budget situation, then yes, that interest money would get spent.
so maybe I can make a simple statement, you can tell me if it's right. So we spend our general fund, then we go to the interest, and then if we have to go deeper into the actual invested funds, then that's, is that the order?
That's a fair statement, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's always confusing because, and I deal with this every day, there's money, right? Okay, the money we have in the bank account and in our investments, and there's the budget. So they never really do match exactly. If you can figure out a secret to make them match, good luck. Okay, that never works. But that's why there's always a confusion between the two. We try to match it, but it's always going to be that timing.
And Mayor Mayo, I would like to point out, we recently just did use some investment money, $600,000 roughly, to pay off a loan that we were paying a high interest rate on. So that's a very prudent, thing to look at. But no, I'm glad you kind of re-asked the question because I think you have a better understanding of it now. Good.
I do, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, one quick question, if I may. Laura, you started off your presentation, first thing out of your mouth was, who knows anything about accounting? Well, the question that I've got is based on the discussions that we've had. Did we finish last year with a balanced budget?
We did. We're going to find
Based
out.
on these discussions, for the common folk that heard all of this that may not understand accounting, and I can always use a lesson as well, I want to make with certainty that we did finish last year with a balanced budget.
We did,
Thank
very
you.
well.
To that end, the auditors, there's 45 days at the end of the close of the fiscal year that we have to wait because any bills that come in, we've got 45 days. Then the auditors will come in and start doing their work and give us their actual final numbers. But as of right now, we finished too good.
We did.
Maybe I can piggyback on Councilman Bowman's question to help me understand in the hierarchy as I just asked. So we balanced the budget, and where did it balance? Did it balance on revenue? Did it balance on revenue plus interest revenue, or did it balance on revenue plus interest plus invested funds?
Revenue.
And I know that's right, all
Revenue.
all revenue.
That's our revenue. Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Any other questions? We'll move to invoices.
You want me to talk about it? I'm getting ready. I'm trying to find my front page. There are 2 invoices that need approval. Virginia Control and Electrical Services for $47,560. That is to install a bypass pump at Plaza Pump Station, right there. Okay, there's one more on there.
Yeah.
The next one, Axon for the $32,000, and then Blair Brothers for Lane Crescent pipe replacement, $34,000.
Okay, any other questions for Laura at this time? Laura, good job. Thank you again.
Thank you.
This time we have a presentation from the museum, and Jennifer England is going to help us, guide us through this archaeological investigation of our new town-owned property. Welcome, Jennifer.
There we go, getting all set up. Great. All right, thank you all for having me. Just been asked to talk today a little bit about the archaeological survey that is up and coming because of the RFP that was put out. So just so that you all know, my department does a lot, conservation, preservation, interpretation, education. And just, the process of development is just another component of what we do. So, there we go. Yeah, we do lots of stuff. But we do weigh in on development, like other departments. When a project comes in, of course, both the town and the county have comp plans. And so when, those projects come in from a developer, community development sends out lots of questions and lots of requests for analysis to various departments to go ahead and weigh in on that. Of course, within our own comp plan, the county or the town, of course, and the citizens have requested that we, have a great deal of concern about protecting our historic character in our sensitive areas. So as a public project, the project that we're discussing today does need to go through the same processes as those that we would expect from any developer. And that being said, it is really important to know what's on a site before work begins. So if a site is deemed historic or worthy of preservation, or if it's deemed dangerous or otherwise unusable, it's really best to know beforehand. So of course, archaeological investigation is really important. It provides us with opportunity to learn about past cultures through the study of artifacts and, sometimes, human remains, sometimes animal bones. And of course, it's a science. Archaeology is a science that really helps us understand the site that we are discussing, as well as, general history about where we came from, how people lived before us, and that sort of thing, just so that you know that those are artifacts from Windsor Castle that were pulled up during one of the archaeological investigations, helping us to learn a little bit about the site. We have some very expensive pottery up there at the top. We have some locks, we have some spoons, of course we have tobacco pipes and, a fragment of a bell jar. So these things really do help us to learn about the sites that we have. And just as a reminder, our history, America was made in Virginia. I always tell everybody, nobody does it like Virginia does. If you've been anywhere else to a museum, they don't do it right. They don't do it right out of state. But colonial settlement, of course, happened on the James River, and Isle County being one of the original shires, we are very important to that beginning story. And I know that Jeff likes to quote me back to me, which I find funny. We always talk about the historic triangle here. But really, if you think about it, it's really more of a rectangle because, this side of the water was also very important. And because of that, we have a very important responsibility to protect and investigate and interpret the history that is here, because these things can be impacted by change. So when Isle White County and the town of Smithfield, and sometimes Windsor too, are presented with potential development projects, the developers usually send their documents to our community development teams. And then they send the historic components to us for review. So depending on, what's been submitted, potentially to me, I'll review the site, look at its location, its maps, its known history, what we can pull up in VCRIS, and, decide from there. Usually I always joke that I want a rubber stamp that says I want a phase 1. Anyway, nobody's gotten me that stamp yet. But developers do this before they proceed to make any kind of commitment to a project. So VCRIS, what is VCRIS? Anyway, after identifying the site, the area in question, and then knowing what we know about its history, I usually consult with VCRIS, and that's a database that's owned by the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. It's a data management system. It's got lots of information in it about the archaeological surveys that have been done in all of Virginia, as well as the architectural resources. And those things, once someone does something of that nature, they usually file a report. So you can pull up a map, and if you zoom in on the particular site that you're discussing, if there's an area that has particular note of disturbance or significance, it will be noted there. Or perhaps it will be noted that nothing has been done there yet. So with regard to Pierceville Grange, we do need a phase 1, and I was asked by the town manager to write an RFP for the project. Some investigation has been done there. It was done prior, but it was not a full phase 1. There was an environmental study, but that's usually just kind of a small component, obviously focusing more on environmental. And it does have a little history component, but it is not what we need at this time. But the historic investigation that was done, when all of this was sort of happening, was really reactive. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not there were potential graves on the site. And so that was kind of a single element that can sometimes be a component of a phase 1. But like I said, that was a very reactive study looking for something in particular. It was not complete at the time. But again, truthfully, especially when you're talking about a former working plantation or a site anywhere in Isle White County that is very old, chances are there will be potential graves on that site, especially if it was a working plantation, family owned for quite some time. So to review, Pierceville is, the component that we have, that's 60-plus acres, is part of a former 300-acre site, farm dating back to the 18th century that was, of course, tied to the founding of our town here. So definitely early 18th century origins, and even, of course, going back to considering pre-contact. But Thomas Pierce was there as early as 1730. He was set up a mercantile business, and there's all kinds of documentation about him selling, mercantile things, hats and furs and cloth and buttons and that sort of thing. His son, Junior, expanded his father's business, and then, was really instrumental during the Revolution. Their business did very, very well, even during British blockades. So, that history is there, and of course, the history bringing us up to present day. And there we go. So, when it comes to surveys, there are a couple of types of investigations. There's your cultural resource survey. It's essentially your desktop analysis. So, you can do that just by pulling up BCRIS and, analyzing some of the maps that you can find to tell the history of a particular site. Nobody goes out and actually leaves their desk in order to do it. They can, but generally speaking, they don't. For your phase 1, it's basically identification, and you're looking at all the sites within a survey area, kind of estimating the site size and whether just really doing everything that desktop analysis does, but also, digging a few test pits and determining if anything further is necessary. Your phase 2 goes a little bit further, and that's evaluation. You're really looking to determine your formal boundaries, especially if you found something important. And then your phase 3 is really kind of a treatment. If you've discovered something that is very important and you have a project that must go forward, you might decide you're going to go ahead and do, recovery. You might go in and pull everything up, pull it into a site such as a museum for analysis later, or you might decide that you're going to go ahead and avoid it, so you'll cover it back up, leave everything in place, we call that in situ, and then perhaps build around it. A phase 1 archaeological survey, that's again that initial investigation. It's got a couple of components. I just kind of went over that a little bit. But you've got your background, your research, you have the field inspection. They will go out and they will dig, what we refer to as test pits. They'll do a pedestrian survey. They'll just kind of walk the site, and they'll determine, X number of test pits need to be dug within a certain amount of space to look for artifacts or boundaries, perhaps, of something that might be there. Perhaps, there is a foundation for a structure, or again, even a cemetery or something else of note. Then they'll compile all of that information, they'll take all those artifacts, and they will do an analysis and report. And usually at the end of that report, you'll see something to the effect of, we don't really think there's anything here, you can go ahead and proceed with development. Or there might be a few caveats, like there is a particular structure here and you really should avoid that. But it's done, these things are done for compliance reasons. You need to satisfy federal, state, and local historic preservation laws. Sometimes Section 106, of course, if you're dealing with federal sites. You need to kind of do that before those land disturbing activities begin. Also, it helps planning for, everybody laying out the site. So next steps, if nothing is found during phase 1, the project usually clears, archaeological review, kind of moves on from there. But if you do discover that something is found or necessary, you can go ahead and move on to a phase 2. So what's typically in a report, what's going to be delivered, you get your survey area, you'll get a discussion perhaps of the design of the project, if it might need to change, or historic context of the site, a field survey, the results, and then a recommendation, don't build here, build there instead. But I did want to note that there are plenty of noteworthy examples here in Isle of Wight County. Have there been projects that I have reviewed that required no action further? Absolutely. But there have been some things that have been wonky over the years. There was a solar farm project within the county in the past 2 to 3 years. There was a cemetery somewhere on the site, and they needed to find it before they began, construction. There was a project in Windsor. That report came in, and they did not note in the report that there was a collier pit there, for coal, and they really needed to find that and the cemetery. So they had not noted that in the report, and that needed to be found before they moved forward. Lawns Point, some of you may or may not know, that's been kind of an ongoing issue for Isle of Wight County for a really long time. That project was really carved up. They carved up the property out there without regard to a lot of where these historic sites were. And so now the county kind of finds themselves in this ongoing situation where if a landowner wants to build you know, a boathouse or, you know, an addition to their home, they are now having to go in and pay before construction, before the county will allow them to do that. They have to go in and pay for their own archaeological services on their land before they build. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but of course that's very expensive. And there was a landowner who wanted to build, I think it was a boathouse. And what was discovered is that he, on his own property, had the section of the Lawns Creek Potter's Annealing Oven, and that's just kind of where those things dry. Unfortunately, it was only half of it was only on his property. The other half was on his neighbor's property. So they went in and they did phase 3, essentially data recovery, and those artifacts did come from, you know, to the museum because of course the actual Lawns Creek Potter, you know, his oven had fallen into the James River. So this was just the annealing oven, but still it was an amazing part. The Lawns Creek Potter has an amazing history because it was really like the first industry in Isle of Wight County. And so, but anyway, he had to pay for that, and we did lose some valuable history because that was not taken care of. And of course, you guys all know the story of Sweetgrass. Of course, you know, they went in, they did a phase 1 on 50 acres, and then that report identified that essentially that site was very, very historic to Isle of Wight County. And, you know, they had to make a great number of changes to the project at hand before that proceeded. And I think we are still waiting for some of the data recovery to come through with that particular site. So that was really, that was a big deal. Yeah, that was what I wanted to tell you there. And then also plow zone, of course, you know, we have lots of farming that has happened in Isle of Wight County, and a lot of, you know, anytime, you know, farming goes out, and you're always pulling things out of the land that is there. Of course, lots of activity here for years. But people always say it's a plow zone, there's nothing there anymore. But honestly, a lot of times things are very much underneath the plow zone. If you look at White Marsh, Bridger's site that way out in Isle of Wight County, it was discovered that the entire footprint of his house was underneath that land that had been, you know, that had been farmed for, you know, a very long time. So he was, of course, a chief patron of St. Luke's. So that was a great discovery, and I know they're still working on that analysis as well. But when it comes to discovery and analysis, you know, usually I put in the memos when I request these phase 1s, if the landowner is willing, we want everything that is pulled up. You know, the artifacts can absolutely add to the history of Isle of Wight County that we do tell. So we always want those to be included in our collection. And, you know, your analysis from your developer, you know, what this does is this shows good faith with the project if they are wanting to build, you know, a structure, a school, a home, whatever it is. And it helps us to be able to add what is discovered or documented as part of Isle of Wight County history. And really what's truly important is that if that is not done before construction begins, a lot can be lost. And has a lot been lost in Isle of Wight County? Absolutely, absolutely already. But, you know, remember again, America started here in Virginia. We did it first and we do it best, right? And of course, as the VA 250 is happening right now, it's really important for us to continue to do what we can to preserve that. We are a part of American history, and we have a responsibility to protect everything here in Isle of Wight County and the town of Smithfield to do our due diligence. So just again, for that sole fact that if we don't, you know, it's irreversible. We can't go back and collect that information later. Things are changing. Absolutely, and we are hoping to make sure that, again, we do our due diligence and we take care of what is ours.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone have any questions for Jennifer?
One very brief question.
Yes.
Jennifer, thank you for the presentation. What does the Virginia Department of Historic Resources have at their avail for it to be at our avail? I see we're going to have to likely pay for a phase 1.
Phase 1,
you're
right.
putting the RFP out. What can they do to help us as a public entity to potentially avoid the cost, or are we necessarily treated the same way as anyone else when we're in this similar situation? Because I do know when they took the power line down from across Cypress Creek, there was an aerial power line, and they dug and put it up under. I know someone, I believe, if I recall correctly, from VDH came down and drilled a small pit just on the shoreline and determined, well, there's nothing there, away you go, keep on going.
Right.
Have we contacted them to see if they can help us with this, or would they be willing to do that, or?
They have scaled back quite a bit what they do because they, like other entities, are even honestly, even now, if we get a phase 1 in, or any other kind of report, and within the past 5 to 7 years, they have said, we don't have the ability to review all of your projects that come in, you need to review them yourself. So they have definitely scaled back on what they're available to do. But can they come down and take a look at things? Yes, but they would not be willing to do an entire phase 1 study for a large site such as this.
Well, just a quick follow, because now maybe.
Yeah.
So we'll get a private vendor, environmental science, somebody archaeological to come and do that. That will then turn their report over to you for review?
They'll turn it over to the town, to community development and us, and then we'll review it, make sure that it appears that they have satisfied all of those requirements, and then they will file it with VDHR. Actually, they will take, it will be filed, and then it will become part of the VCRIS system. So somebody going in the future will be able to find that documentation.
So that's basically the peer review aspect of VDA.
Right, and they do review it once it comes in, and usually it takes a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else have any questions for Jennifer?
I have a question. Jennifer, what will happen if there are graves actually found on the property?
If they do find them, if they find them before construction, then it'll be noted as an area of avoidance. So they'll know not to do any construction within a perimeter of that particular site. If they find them while they are doing construction, then everything comes to a complete halt until the authorities are notified, and then determinations are made from there.
So if they are identified before construction, basically building will just occur around those?
It, right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I have a quick question. And how long do these phase 1 studies take? I mean, I know it varies, but yeah.
Depends. We're dealing with a large site here. I'm assuming it'll be several months.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor? I just want to make sure I completely understand kind of where we are with this property. The previously approved development was not required to have a phase 1. Is that correct? Okay, so therefore they didn't do a phase 1. They did their basic study. All right. Now, getting forward to town-owned property, we're not required to have a phase 1. Is that correct?
It's probably fair to say.
Okay.
But we were doing it, kind of preemptively and.
Which I completely agree with.
As a matter of respect to the property.
I absolutely am behind it and think that we absolutely should. I was just wanting to know whether it was a true requirement or not. It shouldn't be a requirement for us to proceed with this, because I think we absolutely need to find out what is there. I'm a lover of history. This county has a lot of history. Unfortunately, a lot of it was lost here within the past 8 years. But I applaud this and look forward to going forward with it.
Just so everybody understands the process, the RFP is on the street. The proposals are due back by the 11th of September. So we'll receive them and open those. Then Jennifer and I and the team will review those. Council will, get to authorize us to move forward with that. We got an estimation on the cost. I don't know if you feel comfortable saying that publicly, but
it's hard to say.
It's not a ton of money.
Why is it hard to say?
Well, some of it is because if we put a price out there, then the people that are bidding on this will know what they
okay.
And some of it is we may be underestimating or overestimating. But I don't think it's going to be what I would consider an exorbitant amount of money. But you guys will see that before anything gets moved forward. Council will have an opportunity to weigh in and vote to proceed on that.
Any other questions?
Hopefully, if everything comes back, we don't have a whole lot of issues with proposals, by the September work session, you may have an opportunity to review those and decide what to do moving forward.
Jennifer, thank you. I hope that's a big help to the public also. Bill, I want to thank you for approaching her and make sure that she got her job right. So she seems to be well and good at it. She brags about it anyway.
We're going to keep her.
Now we have moved to item 4, additional items of discussion. Anyone have anything they want to bring up at this time?
Well, the one item we have on here that came from the last meeting was discussion of the planning commission guidance. That was back in your packet. Since that meeting, I did receive some comments from Councilman Butler that I sent out to everybody. Angie, have a paper copy.
Bowman.
You have paper copies in front of you for the next discussion and direction moving forward.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just address very, very briefly, but
Please,
I
please.
looked at Councilman Cutler's initial work, and certainly what he had brought up in his work is embodied in the document that I provided. My only, and the only thing that I was just a little bit concerned about is we are dealing with our planning commission, which I think, you know, do a great job. It's a lot of people that work really, really hard. I just, in looking at what a guidance document should embody and should be, I wanted to make sure that I tried to capture the suggestive nature of guidance document, where we didn't mandate per se what they have to do. And that's the temper aspect of what I put into the document that I wrote. Plain and simple, just memorializing, or at least extending to them our appreciation of what they do, and then take the items that Councilman Cutler had in his and just rephrase them a little bit. And that's basically what I've done. Nothing more, nothing less. And I did find on the internet, if you believe what you see on there, as a guidance document. Guidance document is generally not a mandate. It's a non-binding tool used by agencies to explain, interpret, or set forth policy on statutory, regulatory, or technical issues. Its purpose is to clarify how an agency intends to apply existing rules or exercise discretion rather than create a new enforceable legal obligation. So that's it in a nutshell.
I know there's been questions about legalities of some of this as to, and I think if something came up during planning commission, that would be addressed anyway. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct, yes.
Does anyone else have any concerns?
I have a question. Number 3, under the revision that we had that's before us to be approved, it says recommend rules to ensure developers pay for and justify each individual SUP. I did have a conversation with Tammy about that, and she said that, and I know that when Darren put this together, his concern was that developers were paying the same thing as individuals, correct?
Per lot.
Yes, ma'am. No, they're not per lot, per SUP.
Per SUP, yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
correct. But when I talked with Tammy, it wasn't so much as the developer paying for SUPs per lot. The fee that we're charging for the developer as well as the individual, that fee we charge is basically for advertising.
That is true. I think the basis of the fee is the cost of advertising. However, that also lends to the fact that, you know, we are the decision makers in our town and we make the rules as far as zoning is concerned, and what we are seeing is a disparate benefit for the same cost. And I'll give an example, just an unspecific example. If you had a developer that has developed in our neighborhood and they had a neighborhood they wanted to build of 100 homes, so 100 lots, and Mr. Harris also wanted to do something to his single lot that he lives on, so he would pay $400 for an SUP to, say, change to one parking spot. Okay. If that developer wanted to have 100 homes with one parking spot, he would file a single SUP also for $400 that would apply to 100 lots. Okay. So he is realizing a 100-fold benefit in this case as compared to our citizens. Now, conversely, and I won't put our planning staff on the spot on this, but I would say the level of work for Mr. Harris's one SUP, so yes, it does account for advertising, also accounts for the time and effort that our town staff has to put into the work. The level of effort that our town staff puts into an SUP for Mr. Harris as opposed to an SUP for 100 homes being built is vastly different, I would have to assume. I can't imagine even the level of preparation, you know, to come in here and brief a single lot vice being prepared to come in here and brief a controversial development. The level of preparation for that alone is huge. So if we, on the flip side, had been charging $400 per lot to that developer, then they would have paid $40,000, right? And that may compel a developer to say, okay, well, maybe I need to reassess this plan, right? Maybe I only actually have 20 lots that need SUPs, and I can make the rest of them conform with the zoning laws that the staff and Planning Commission and Town Council of Smithfield worked so hard to create. So I think it serves a number of purposes, but I think the greatest problem with the status quo is the disparate benefit.
So you're looking to recommend the flat fee that we normally charge SUPs, whatever that price is, it should be that amount times the number of lots that a developer is looking to develop. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that's an idea, but I'm saying I think that the Planning Commission and the town staff and legal team that are the experts could help us say that in a probably better way. So that's why the recommendation or the direction to the Planning Commission is to recommend rules to developers pay for and justify each individual SUP. Because that's the reason that guidance is written that way. Conversely, if you say, ensure the maximum extent of the law that those who are granted SUPs provide compensation that mitigates the impacts and coordinate with Isle of Wight County. So I think those are two distinct things, but I don't know, if I was the Planning Commission and I read that, I would say, okay, I'm not really sure what that means. And I would even go as far as to say we could even be more specific. But I think the context of these discussions and any guidance or direction that we approve, and then I obviously in the representative on the commission, so can assist with that interpretation.
Okay, so your comment there brings up another question for me. So we're voting on this tonight and passing it off to Planning Commission. Would it make more sense to allow Planning Commission to review it along with us to make recommendations, or we're going to vote on it and say this is what we'd like to see?
So I don't think we're going to vote on anything tonight unless I'm mistaken or somebody's planning to make a motion. I anticipate we'll see this on our regular town council agenda. However, I think this is our opportunity to see if there is some consensus. I personally, and I'll relinquish the floor, but I'll take a moment to make my case. I think I appreciate the effort by Councilman Bowman, but I think it's inadequate and not quite insulting to the Planning Commission, but in many ways, our Planning Commission they're wonderful, and they're volunteers. I mean, they make $50 a meeting, I think. And they're so knowledgeable and put so much time into it. A lot of these platitudes just say keep doing the same thing.
I realize that we can't vote on it tonight, but make a recommendation to pass it on to town council. I got a question, Tammy. Do we know what other areas are doing as far as charging developers and individuals for SUPs?
I don't know that they charge differently between developers and regular citizens. I will say it has been my understanding from previous council when we brought fee adjustments that they wanted to make sure that the SUP covered the cost of advertising. And so our SUP fee is low in comparison to other localities.
Can you check to see what the county does?
I want to say it's $1,500.
A flat fee?
For the SUP.
For a developer and for an individual?
Correct.
They charge the same?
It's just the SUP.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. The other question that I had, Darren, was number 4 in reference to the future land use map. I know that we've had discussions before in the past where we have parked vacant land in community conservation, and I remember a discussion that we had at one time, and you were against that. But now we're looking for the future land use map to put everything there. And I'm under the impression that the future land use map is, I guess, town council, based on the comprehensive plan, is to be visionaries to say, how do we want this land developed in the future? Or am I looking at that wrong?
So my understanding and what I would say the future land use map is, I wouldn't use a term visionary because that would, to me, that would say that, you know, you're using the future land use map as a way to supplant the comprehensive plan, which is where you would showcase your vision and all the elements of that vision. The future land use map as a component of comprehensive planning is a replication of our actual zoning map. However, the land use designations are what the town council has said, this is our future desire for this parcel of land. And so on the future land use map, it's adjudicated as PMUD, right? So the town council, when we used to have the Pierceville property, and I'd have to look back, I'm not sure if it was on the future land use map, but it made it to PMUD status, right?
Well, we didn't have PMUD at the time.
Well,
we came up with that in order to be able to accept that project.
Sure, theoretically. So if we moved now, like we just moved recently to change the status of that property, we could have a motion next week to change the future land use map to PMUD, for instance, and that would be this body saying, our goal for that property, or the direction we'd like to see that property go, and supports our comprehensive plan, the vision, goals, and objectives of our comprehensive plan, is through that designation that's on the future land use map. So then what that then says to a developer is, Smithfield says they want this on this parcel of property, and that's congruent with my business plan, right? So let me go to Smithfield and build something that's congruent with myself and the town. So that's how localities advertise to businesses, whether they be developers, commercial interests, things of that nature, and say, we want X parcel to look like this in the future.
Okay, but this says vacant land should be identified as conservation or justified otherwise. So if we put everything in conservation, then everything has to be rezoned when it's presented to us. So we wouldn't put it in a zoning how we want it developed in the future.
I want to make sure we're not getting the future land use map and the zoning map mixed.
Thank you.
Well, that's right, you did tell
The future land
me.
use map does not necessarily reflect the zoning.
The zoning, okay.
Right. It does reflect council and planning commission, the town's future desires for that property in whatever threshold you want to set. So in year 2050, what do we think would support the town on this parcel?
So it doesn't matter what zoning is
The
in.
zoning overall governs what the use is for the property. So the comprehensive plan, future land use map, could say, you know, spaceport, but if the zoning is ag, it'll be ag until it gets rezoned.
Okay.
You know, but what the future land use map does, it does tell, you know, this is what the council thinks would benefit the community on this parcel in the future.
How we would like to see it developed.
Right, but ultimately, somebody would still have to go through the rezoning process to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, and just, if I may, on that point, so identified as conservation or justify otherwise, you know, I think we all acknowledge that the council and our citizens have a desire for some growth, particularly in the commercial sector. So, you know, justify otherwise is open direction to the planning commission to say, hey, you know, we would like to see these undeveloped plots of lands be this, but justify otherwise, right, for commercial uses or something like that. The previous guidance says, you know, I think makes it pretty clear, dense residential is not what we would want you to put on the future land use map. However, I think the context is also clear, but we could make it more clear. I'd be happy to do that, that, you know, conservation or some type of commercial endeavor, you know, could be a way to phrase that.
And number 5, it talks about us the zoning laws protecting our schools. So you feel that we could do a better job of that?
Yes, ma'am. So, and here's where I think we could do better and why I think it starts with the Planning Commission is because, let's say the land on the exit of town, the couple hundred acres or so that's for sale, somebody buys that land tomorrow and comes into the planning department tomorrow and wants to build 200 homes there. We don't currently, to my awareness, now we may have the legal capability and the documentary capability to do so based on the work that the county has done, but we have no plans in place that I'm aware of. We have no level of knowledge about and readiness to be able to say, okay, developer, here's what you have to do for the schools in Smithfield if you're going to build here. So we don't have any of the practice or process or elements in place that I'm aware of for the Planning Commission to ask a developer questions and then be able to answer it and support our schools in the way in which we're now capable. And I think it is very, very prudent for us to be ready to do that, not be reacting to it to do that.
I don't think that, oh, okay.
As soon as we would get that, that would go straight to the schools for review. And anything that came back from the schools that says, here's what our needs are, that goes straight to the developer. So we already have that process in place. It has always relied on the schools because we can't do that. It has to come from the schools. So we do have that process in place. And schools say, here's our need, they go straight to the developer. And unless that need's met, then Planning Commission is not in a position to favorably recommend the project.
So let me go a little farther then and say, perhaps this could be even satisfied by a legal brief. I'm not really sure, but what I would wager that the Planning Commission and probably us as well would be heavily reliant on the town staff because it would be completely new to us to ensure that, or the Planning Commission perhaps, to say, now you can accept proffers, go do it. Right? And we can do that, but as a Planning Commission member, as a town council member, we want to understand and know how we do that.
Yeah, if the school report came back and said we have this need and here's the impact on the schools, then you have the ability to ask for it. And that's, I mean, we've always gotten those comment letters from the schools, and when they say no impact, you're right, you have no bounds to ask for, or to accept anything. But if they came back and said there is an impact and here's what it is, that goes straight to the developer. It's always been up to the schools to indicate an impact or not. So that process exists.
And I have a comment on that. I think the schools have they've gotten better at that. I mean, I think initially we didn't get a lot of reports that had that. And I mean, they have a more detailed CIP. They've changed their classrooms around at the high school to show that they have needs. So I think that's gotten better recently. Do you not agree with that? I mean, it may not be everything that we want, but I think it definitely has gotten better than it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Even from 2 years ago when we first started.
I would just use a different terminology and say that capability actually exists now. It's not even that it got better.
Well, that's
but
true.
I would ask the legal team, and maybe it's not an immediate question now, because it seemed in the past considerably more difficult of a discussion, whereas now it seems, and I understand the work the school's done. I did have some collaboration or discussions with the school board as that related to it during that era. So I guess what I'm saying is it sounds very simple, but it didn't sound very simple then.
Well, that's because the schools always reported no impact. And so if the schools report no impact, we're legally bound. But now that they're in a position to tell us what the impact is, we can then take that and move that forward. So our side of the house has always been that way and will remain the same. Now the schools are in a position to tell us there's an impact.
Let me ask the question a different way then. So if the response comes back, there is an impact, we have a written or some type of policy that we can follow to do this, and the legal team is already versed, like we know what numbers we would be working with. I mean, I know we wouldn't know student numbers, but
it would all be based off what the schools tell us, because we are not the
And would we need anything additional in our zoning laws?
No.
Not related to
They're
the,
already required to pay for their impacts.
thank you.
I have a question I want to just go back to, Mayor, if I could, regarding what Mr. Cutler was talking about. This is a question for the attorney. Different fees for an individual versus a developer, and it's maybe by lot. And I think this came up in our discussion with Mr. Turner, and he was going to look into this. Do you have any more information about that?
So we did look into this generally at a high level and then at a granular level with respect to Article 6 and the SUPs for the zoning ordinances, and that's what I just pulled up to refresh my memory. The way that it's currently written for the application process, it is not by parcel or by lot. And so I think what Mr. Cutler used as an example as a general SUP applying to more than one parcel, I think is actually permissible under the current Article 6 of the zoning ordinance, right? And so we could not at this phase, the way the zoning ordinance is written, require multiple SUPs for the same deviation or the same request by different parcel and charge per parcel. It would be one SUP applying to multiple parcels. So there are problems that, and I think that's a policy decision and an amendment that that I think would be viable to kind of solve for the problem that Mr. Cutler raised with respect to a developer asking for effectively 200 SUPs, but really packaging it as one. So I would like to see it go through the zoning ordinance to clarify that. I think with respect to the way it's written with recommend rules, I don't think a rule necessarily would solve for that given the way that Article 6 is written right now. And I think at a higher level, charging disparate fees dependent on the applicant does raise some problems. And I think at, the individual homeowner versus the developer conceptually sounds like that makes sense, but the problem is when you kind of do get into, are we talking by size? Are we talking by individual versus LLC? And there can be discrimination issues there. So, so I do think that I think the look would be to the zoning ordinance itself and maybe refining the language to show a more granular process of looking at how an SUP is applied for and what needs to go into the application and whether it's evaluated by a per plat or per parcel.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
We've gotten kind of way off of guidance
We
information to
have.
the Planning Commission.
Right.
Well, and I think, and council can say I'm wrong, what we've just been talking about, my number 4 says ensure to the maximum extent of the law that those who are granted special use permits compensate for the mitigated impacts. This should include close coordination with Isle of Wight County as it relates to school capacities and improvements. I think that encompasses everything that we've spent the last 20 minutes discussing.
Yeah, that would take care of this amendment you're talking about.
That's right, and I guess I was really comparing the August 4th memorandum that I think Mr. Cutler was referring to with respect to rules to ensure developers pay for and justify each SUP versus the school proffer issue, which I see as different. And so I do think, though, Mr. Bowman, what you just said is the broader policy statement, as articulated here, is exactly what you said, a policy statement, as opposed to a change in the zoning ordinance, which would be required to require different fees by size or by developer or by person. Correct.
So I think both statements have their merits. What I would say is, if you take what the attorney said, and if the intent was for the Planning Commission and Planning Department to make a change to our zoning laws that accounted for this disparity, I don't think bullet number 4 would get that message to the Planning Commission, unless you take the financial aspect of mitigating impact. But I don't even think that specific bullet is actually that impactful. And I'll go back to my notes to say, just going through, Mr. Bowman's points. So the first one, when deliberating, always keep in mind geographical limitations. Well, I would say that's already known. And the second part of that is a statement. It doesn't provide any guidance to the Planning Commission as opposed to saying, do not change zoning laws in ways that increase density, which is an 80-20 issue with our citizens. 80% of our citizens have said, we support these guidelines. And then I'll go to the next one.
We support which guidelines? The ones that you've submitted?
The ones that we revised together as a team in our last meeting.
Where did you get to 80% from?
From the Smithfield Times poll,
Oh.
which
How
was
many
not a
people were in that
scientific poll.
How many people were in that poll? I mean, I didn't see the poll, so.
More than 100.
Okay, 100 people.
When I would challenge you to go back to the Tischler-Bice study from the county and investigate all the comments, and you will likely see there it's also an 80-20 issue. Go back to the Planning Commission and Town Council's efforts to prepare for the comprehensive plan, and it was comments, stop the development. We had a citizen create an informal poll on social media, and almost all the comments are either stop building, stop the growth, slow the growth, let infrastructure catch up, build the infrastructure before the growth. So I go to number 2.
Okay, let's go, can we go back to number 1? Okay. It says, do not change zoning laws in ways that increase density. Special use permits should only be considered when approval would not allow for increased density. Does that say, Planning Commission, we don't want you to improve any projects that increases density? No increased density at all?
So I think there's two sentences there.
Okay.
The first one is do not, so that's an affirmative that says,
Okay.
You shall not do this. So that's direction, do not increase density. The second sentence though says special use permits should only be considered. So what that is in engineering terms, or so to speak, is fairly strong language to say you should do this all the time, but it gives you some leeway to say, okay, this is exceptional, right?
Okay.
Something here was exceptional. So, maybe Public Works could relate as an engineer. Often you will see things in guidelines or procedures, and it says, you shall do this, and then it says you should do this, and should gives you some leeway.
Okay. That clarifies that for me.
Mr. Mayor, let me just reiterate, I've said it several times in different meetings, and was part of that last meeting that directed attention to what Darren's just talking about. Of both documents, I happen to think that number 1 is the most important piece of either document right now. They've asked for guidance. Several of us feel that we have gone to those 2 meetings and said basically this same thing. Those of us that were elected in that last sweep, slow it down, get it under control. To 80-20, not me. Mine are 90-10. Everybody who talks to me says enough is enough. We're seeing it in the newspapers. We hear it all the time. And what I said last time, I'll say it again, language is important. Words have meaning, which Darren was just talking about. How we meld the two together, for me, Darren's number 1 point has to be the number 1 point in whatever we come up with. They've asked for a policy guidance or a guidance that says do not entertain an SUP if its sole objective is the creation of density. Okay? We've been battling that for months. We have held the line well, but until it is policy written and given to these folks that bust their fanny and do all the vetting and bring all this information to us, we're asking them to continue to work in a gray area. We have got to hold the line on this particular point.
So, Bill, you're saying no increase in density anywhere, just no SUPs for increase in density. So
Residential.
that's, oh, residential, yeah, but I heard one of the new candidates, he doesn't even want commercial growth.
Right.
So you're saying for even for residential, no increase in density?
Correct.
Okay, then that's what it needs to say. Here, there is some flexibility for planning.
Well, again, to the second sentence, you know, sometimes we lose track of this. We're trying to answer a really legitimate question on the part of Planning Commission. What are you guys looking at? Sometimes I think we forget that no matter what they do, whether they have our guidance or not, no matter what product comes out of Planning Commission comes to us, we are the final judges on whatever comes.
That's true.
So if they do, and there's enough discussion, and, you know, 5, 2, 4, 3, say, well, you know, maybe that lot, you know, maybe they need that 11th house in there, and they come up with some justification and present it. You know, bottom line, it's still 7 people sitting around this table to make that final discussion or final decision. But to encourage, you know, I think Darren has used the phrase, you know, to hang that billboard out there to developers. Well, you know, we're really pretty flexible. Our zoning code says 5 here, 6 here, 7 here, but come in and make a good argument. We'll give you 11. That's got us into trouble in the past. It is not what our citizens want. You've heard me say it before. If we hear the word density and we think about fiscal impact, infrastructure impact, crowding on the roads, and use all of those synonyms at the same time, and not just another house here, another house here. Well, if we only put 2 more here, you know, the next guy's going to ask for 6. So my recommendation as point 1 guidance to the Planning Commission is to work within the zoning codes that exist. If you are not happy with that and you feel that we need to change them, manufacture a change, send it up to us, and we'll either accept it or not. But we have good zoning laws in place. We have a staff that does their best due diligence every time something comes before us. And again, I'll just close with what I said. That is, to me, the most important point that we can offer to Planning Commission at this time.
Ms. Butler, I could also offer up an example of our current live right now work in Planning Commission in which this is just directly applicable. We are currently, you know, making a transition to this big matrix system that the planning staff is developing, and there are things about that transition that density could change, could be affected, particularly in those 8 categories. But there's other ways too, and there, you know, maybe sometimes unintended consequences and things like that. But you know, as we are combining uses and working through changes and things like that, some of them have disparate differences from one zoning ordinance to another. Let's say, I don't know, I don't have one right offhand, but let's just say a lot size in zoning section A and a lot size in zoning section B are different. But we're going to change our definition and make the definition the same, but in the zoning areas are different. So now we're faced with a decision, because we're creating this commonality. Now we have to look at these 2 zoning areas, A and B, and say, okay, are we going with the higher number or the lower number, right? And Planning Commission may have to make a decision like that. So the first sentence addresses that very clearly. Do not make the decision that increases density. The second line is also germane to the work we're doing right now. Special use permits should only be considered when approval would not allow for increased density. So that directly addresses the 8 items, right? And directly addresses our citizens' concerns that Mr. Harris just addressed. But it also will assist the Planning Commission with the other 80 or however many uses and SUPs, opportunities and categories that there are to look at those and say, okay, we know now when we look at this, don't make the decision that allows for increased density on SUP in this case, because the town council said you should not do that. But
Okay,
if they may have.
Give me an example for the second sentence.
Well, that was kind of it. So for the 8 categories of zoning density, so setbacks, units per acre, that kind of thing, that will resolve that question for the planning commission. Should only be considered when approval would not allow for increased density. So, so basically SUP shouldn't be considered in those areas. And then should only be considered when approval would not allow, so that would be in the real life approval, right? Say the next application that comes before the planning commission.
I think we need to have another revision sent to us. Other than, yeah.
So,
And you
yeah.
guys have got to work through this at some point in time. And
Well, the number one is what we're looking at right now. And I like the idea of having that question of not expanding, but if there's a situation that arises, they can present that to us.
so
Isn't that correct?
Doesn't sound like it.
no, it does sound like that. So keep in mind, do not change zoning laws in ways that increase density. So
Right.
when we talk zoning laws that we're going to change, right, we have a public hearing. Ms. Clary briefs us, we're going to change downtown residential to 5 homes per acre to 10 homes per acre, right? So what this says, planning commission, do not send that to the town council. We're not going to approve it. That's all that says. Do not change zoning laws in ways that increase density. So those laws, it says, okay, well, we shouldn't make that change and send it to the town council because it increases density. What it goes on to say, SUPs should only be considered when it would not allow for increased density. So what that says is, planning commission, you should not do that. However, we didn't say you cannot do that. So if there is an exceptional case, you are duly impressed, it is a great benefit to the town, it is a new resource that we don't have, then there is some leeway in there, but the direction is you shouldn't do that, right? But you have a little flexibility, and that's what should gives you. And that's normal parlance.
Right. And let me just jump back in because as I heard Valerie say it, and then it kind of sunk in. We all know what we're talking about around the table when we're talking about density. We should start using that word residential in front of it also. I mean, this council has approved virtually every SUP request that has come before it that has not been tied to density. And we've been very flexible and supportive of what the Planning Commission has brought forward, particularly in the area of commercial and retail development. So we need to make sure that we are clear in that, in both writing and in speaking to the citizens.
so would you suggest as a provision to put the word residential in front of both of those densities?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I think both write-ups have merit, and I think that what Mr. Bowman's intention was is good, and I actually think that some of the, I'll say some of the softer language in Mr. Bowman's write-up could be combined with some of the more affirmative language in mine, or the joint write-up that we did, and I would be happy to take a crack at that if you would like. However, I do stand firm that I think in most cases the affirmative language of the 5 points that we already worked on in the previous meeting, need to be maintained in most cases in order, as someone that sits on the Planning Commission, to actually go there and execute the direction given.
Mr. Mayor, that would be fine with me. My only concern as I leave, and it's the last thing that I'm going to say about it, is I do worry a little bit from a legal perspective, not that I'm a lawyer, but if you go right out of the gate and say without justification that you shall not do this with a piece of property, I think some of the courts have held that by doing that and not allowing under the First and 14th Amendment that your right to petition for something and also for the governmental entity to hear it. Sometimes it's been, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, please, it can be considered a taking basically by the or by the governmental body by not considering that. And to do that, I think the courts have held that that's a little bit problematic. I'll leave it at that. Ma'am?
I was gonna say, I don't have that all fleshed out, particularly with regards to, 14th Amendment takings, but I would say that when we're talking about, for lack of a better word, mandates from the council to the planning commission, I do think that what Mr. Bowman had read in terms of what this does serve as is a policy guidance statement as opposed to what would other be called like an edict, right? And so I do think that firm language is fine with the understanding that whether or not this is enforceable against the planning commission is a different question. And I think when you're giving guidance with discretionary decisions such as reviewing and approving SUPs, for example, there's of course you're allowed to provide guidance in a policy direction, but when you're talking about what you shall or shall not do, when the discretion lies with, for example, the planning commission first before that does come to the town council, I think that's just what I would like to couch this as, is that ensuring that everyone understands that this is a policy guidance statement as opposed to a mandate that would be otherwise.
So I guess what you're saying is you do share my concern?
I do share your concern, although I wouldn't be able to articulate whether, for example, a private cause of action could be had against the town, for example, for a taking. I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
Well, I don't think even bullet number 1, it doesn't refer to property, it refers to zoning laws. It doesn't discuss property at all, so I don't see how that would be germane to it. And similarly, I don't think we're crafting something that we want to be able to use the planning commission to hold them legally accountable and sue them if they send us zoning laws that increase density. I don't think that's really our intention. So
I understand. I just wanted to make that clear when we're talking about enforceability, for example.
Mayor, I just have one comment quick. I don't think in either one of these documents it says shall, so I'm not worried about that. And I think the first one in the original document where it says do not change, the first one is sort of the key. Vice Mayor Harris has alluded to that about not increasing density. I think that's, the rest of them all follow after that. I don't have a problem really with either one of these documents. Mr. Bowman's is more broad, and that's fine. Mr. Cutler's is more detailed, and that's fine too. How we mesh them together, whatever. I will say one thing that Mr. Bowman did add on here that I do like is part number 6, which is on the second page. Consider the benefits of open space in the revision of the future land use map. Open space provides for improved quality of life by providing calming and ecological benefits. So that I would agree with 100%. That's what we're looking for, more green space, not that relates directly to the density. So, I appreciate, both of these documents.
Michael, can you mesh these in any form or fashion and then let legal counsel look at this before we, because I'm concerned about some legal things that could pop up. I know when you start telling somebody what they can do and what they can't do, to me it gets restrictive if you don't have the ability to at least present something that might be beneficial. That's what I don't want to see.
I don't think, I think all of this is guidance. I don't think even what Mr. Cutler's saying is that it's mandatory, we're making them do this. This is all guidance. The Planning Commission could get this and say, you know what, we don't agree with you, we're going to do whatever we want, and they'll send it up to us, and we will not vote for it. That's what's going to happen. So we're just trying to provide them guidance. Where are we thinking? We've talked about this numerous times at when we've had our joint meetings, multiple times when we've talked about this. None of this is a surprise. Now we're just getting into nitpicking words, which is good. Words mean something. I get that. But this is guidance. This is not a mandate. These are, from the Planning Commission, these are professional people. They are well-trained. I have a lot of respect for the details and the weeds that they get into. And that's very important. This should be an overarching guideline, and the density is the key. We're saying don't increase density. End of the line. We could say that and say nothing else. That's it.
yeah, I would like to reiterate too that the Planning Commission asked for this, not, we didn't do this for funsies. you know, they asked for it.
If council wants us to work on a document for the next work session, we can do that. We can circulate it as early as we possibly can.
I think we left the last meeting with planning to have a discussion on this meeting and have a vote in our next town council meeting. Our citizens support this. The council, it seemed, supported this. Mr. Bowman wanted to do some work on it. I think that it's semantics and could basically be mashed together. But I don't see. So what I would say about it is, while I think this Mr. Bowman's document could be a great addition and make it all more cohesive, I don't think standing on its own it would provide much guidance at all to the Planning Commission, except for bullet number 6, which if I'd ever got there, my notes said agree, keep that one. So I would say some form or fashion of the original 5 that we worked on collectively with number 6 could be collaboratively put together, I think, fairly reasonably, and I would be happy to do that.
That needs to be reported back to Michael and distributed to us before our council meeting, Tuesday.
If you want it on that agenda, yes, we would need it.
And for the record, I will not be here. I will be missing that meeting, the only one that I've missed in 4 years. I'll be on family vacation. But
You'll have the information if you need to make a comment beforehand.
Sure, be glad to.
Yeah.
But I won't be here to vote on it, which is fine. The world didn't stop because I go on vacation.
And just one last thing, because we have sort of beat it to death, but almost all of the discussion that several of us offered in support of point 1 is Mr. Bowman's point 2. Almost word for word, special use permits should be considered special in nature. They should not be simple mechanism to circumvent. These are the things that could be blended in and support, so that we're giving both specific and a general umbrella. If Councilman Cutler wants to take that on and blend it together, I for one, am glad to let him have the pen.
I'm done.
Steve's done. Mr. Cutler, can you send him something as soon as possible so we can have?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Is there any other discussion today?
Yes, sir. We have a couple updates we need to provide. They'll be brief. One, I'll talk about the Oak and Ivy situation. And this states something that we were waiting on the surveyors to do some revisions to the easement map that the new attorneys had identified they needed. We got that this morning and have sent that to the attorneys, and that they are using those to finalize the easement documents, which we should have within a week or 2. So hopefully by the next time we're in this room for work sessions, you will final set of documents to approve. And my understanding is that the Oak and Ivy folks are ready to execute them as soon as they get there. So hopefully next month we have those in front of you. The only other thing is,
Michael, can I
Yes,
just
of course.
interrupt? I asked Michael to kind of bring that to us. So I'm now hearing from the folks that we heard from a long time ago. And let me just make the public statement so there's nobody confused about where I am. They have gone, the collective, the original owners, the secondary owners, and all these people. This has been about 16 or 18 months where they have successfully dodged virtually everything that we have told them to do. And although it was tongue-in-cheek, if after the next meeting we are not seeing a plan to move forward that is workable, doable, and verifiable, I will move to have Tammy's department close them down until we get things done.
I will add just briefly, in the last Planning Commission meeting in which they were in attendance, we did send them back to the drawing board and say come back with a comprehensive full plan, not piecemeal.
And then the only other piece is on if you got something on Grace that you want to update about, if you heard things.
Yeah, they should be starting milling and paving on Grace tomorrow. They expect to wrap up the work before the Labor Day holiday. I think that is weather this thing.
I thought it was going to be
And Ed, can you clarify the work on James Street? I mean, half of James Street is basically undrivable, and I know there was some discussion as to who's responsible for that, but that needs to be taken care of.
It does.
Appreciate
And we
it.
have brought that up to VDOT. That's not part of their original scope of work with slurry as part of this Gray Street paving. They have said they're going to fix it because it was disturbed for them to run that storm drain
Right.
down James Street. Trying to get them to add it to the paving they have here now. I think those are separate buckets of money in VDOT's eyes.
Can it at least be repaired? I mean, people, you literally cannot drive on it. The holes are so deep. I mean, and I don't know who's responsible for it, but I mean, it's a big issue for not only the residents of James Street, but anybody that goes back and forth to the Child Center, the Y, the library. I mean, it really is a mess. And, I'm not saying it's your fault. I know but I mean, they broke it. They got to fix it, kind of a thing.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can we get a price on what it would cost? I mean, how much, I don't know paving, how much would it cost to fix? If the town were to undertake it and then get back to VDOT, and VDOT, because they're either gonna pay for it or not. And if they don't pay for it,
I think they will fix it, and we will try to hold them to fixing it. When we had discussions about this earlier, it was going to be, we'll address it as part of the project when slurry comes to pave Gray Street, for the discussions we've had with them. I've been talking to the contractor, and I haven't heard anything about that. So I reached out to VDOT today, said, hey, we talked about this before, what's going on?
we'll ask Gotham to come to one of our meetings so we can talk to him.
So I emailed today.
We will stay on top of them and make sure they get that.
Yeah, this has gone on way too long.
I don't think we want to pay for it and then try to get reimbursed.
Yeah, that's never
But
gonna
then,
happen.
I mean, I do understand that, but our citizens, as Councilwoman Biebermeyer said, I mean, somebody's gonna have to fix it. And, where's the break point where we decide whether or not, or get them to write us a letter. Tell us they're not going to, and then we can write our senator. Senator Jordan, we'll see if she can, and Delegate Watson, see if they can help us out a little bit. And especially if they said that they were gonna have it part and parcel of that project, and now they've forgotten it, somebody needs to tell somebody, you need to get a memory, or at least get some intestinal fortitude to do what you said you were gonna do.
And
If we need them before here to do that, I would love it.
It's a safety issue not only for vehicles, but pedestrians crossing the street. We got Halloween coming up in 2 months. That's a busy area.
The bottom line is they're on site, and they said they were gonna do it, they ought to by God do it.
They've been on site for several months. Keep putting it off.
We'll keep on top of it.
Any other reports?
Mr. Mayor, I had just a couple things, and really, these are going to just go onto a future agenda, but one thing I think is important for us to discuss, and Ms. Councilwoman Butler had brought this up in the past. I'm not sure we ever got it resolved, and that was when we were going to respond to an email as a group. We just had that come out again as an issue. We have what I think is an important question in a group email at the current time, and we don't currently, for the short answer, it seems to me it would be if Mr. Stallings is fortunate enough for the rest of us to be on the email, he should make a quick response and say, I'm referring it to the council or something of that nature, so the citizen is acknowledged. But then we need to, I don't know what we do if the mayor or vice mayor, or if we want to take turns,
I did bring that up, but nobody seemed to be in consensus with me, so
Well,
I'm thinking everybody.
I thought we always used to send them to the town manager, right out of the gate. Send that, he would brief us, not to give you more.
I don't know which item we're talking about.
They were
The
items
bigger
that,
item that deals with the power and the internet issue that we all got, and I guess we all.
We touched base with them back in the time that originally happened, and Dominion was in the neighborhood doing an undergrounding project to help stop the outages. The project is not ours, we don't control electricity. They were in the neighborhood doing an underground
Right, but that,
That's not really the point,
Right.
though. I mean, the point is,
It
like,
still
we
needs to be
have,
resolved.
we have an email that we received today, and it's a really good and thoughtful email from one of our citizens, and I acknowledge it. It takes time to reply, but, and Mr. Stallings is on this email, so I just think we never, Ms. Butler, you did bring up and had heavy emphasis on this, and I think we all were on the same page. We just never actually made a decision. I think
Well,
that was.
I always thought the decision was to report it back to the town manager if you got some information from a citizen that you needed to address
Who was
something.
the email today?
What email are we talking about?
I ain't get it.
Civic recognition for Lawrence Pitt.
Oh, my God.
That came in several days ago.
yeah,
That's 259. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a follow-up email. I'm sorry, the original
yeah.
was a few days ago, but
8/17. Oh, we got a week ago.
none of us replied.
Let me see.
I don't
So
You are on it.
Well,
I'm not on it.
you are. I apologize.
It was
The
Monday the
original
17th.
was Monday at noon,
Last Monday, dude?
Monday the 17th.
Well,
Even this specific email, while important, is not really the point. I think like I said, I think Ms. Butler brought this up in that last episode we had. We did get to the point where, like you said, town manager was taking care of business, but is, you know, like in this case, you know, a canned email, I don't think is gonna resolve this. I didn't know if we, you know, in the event that Michael's not on there, but maybe it's not a problem
did you get that on your,
on my iPad.
I got it on.
It went to your personal.
Yeah, it came to me on personal email. So that's why I
And I
haven't,
was copied on it.
that's why I haven't seen my response.
Yeah, you were CC'd on it.
But that came in personal to me.
And then, Mr. Stallings, if we could add to the next planning session, an opportunity to discuss direction for staff reports. And I'll discuss a little bit with you some context. And then the only other element I wanted to ask is, do we have a forecast date for the upcoming intergovernmental meeting?
I will have to get with the county administrator. Typically, they're quarterly. And we'll have to get together and get a date that works for everybody.
If they're quarterly, when was the last one? Because the last one that we had in this room that I think a lot of people were at was last
Well,
year,
as
wasn't
far,
it?
the joint one that is all members of both bodies is in the December timeframe. The one that happens quarterly throughout the year is only the mayor and vice mayor and their representatives. But the joint one of both bodies would be in the December, January timeframe.
So I think September planning, or maybe October, but, you know, our citizens are demanding changes and results on density and growth and the management of that from the town and the county. And what we're seeing in the Newport Development Service District right now is a huge influx of homes, and then we just saw a county zoning change to an urban residential that greatly increased their density capability. So I think we should initiate some conversations amongst ourselves in preparation for that intergovernmental meeting about discussions we want to have with the county as it relates to that.
And Michael, I'm gonna piggyback on that. My last thing was, do we have a date for the fall retreat?
No, typically we would do that after the election, so the newly elected individuals would be part of that. So that would typically be in the January, February time that we would do that meeting. If council wants to move one sooner than that, we can do that, but we would still anticipate doing one after the elections.
Yeah, bring it up, because the last several times we've talked about it, using the word fall, something coming up. So either way, we should have a date set. And that's the report from the last one.
Any other discussion? Any other direction?